Part one of this interview began last week in episode 11, where Sandy Cooper from the Balanced Momcast unpacked so much good stuff for us as we consider the potential root of our busyness, from perfectionism to people pleasing to comparison, and the problems our busyness can cause, like hindering our relationships with others and God, to actual health problems, and even limiting our effectiveness as believers in Jesus. She explored the first type of busy person, the poor time manager, describing the first two subtypes of poor time managers: the one who doesn't know her priorities and the one who knows them but lacks the self-discipline to carry them out. And then, just as you were getting ready to take notes on the third type and possibly on the verge of discovering your busyness personality, I said your least favorite three words: to be continued. Well, the wait is over, and today we'll continue our conversation about the types of busy people we just might be and include some tips and strategies to enable you to better balance the busyness in your life. Welcome to episode 12 of the Unperfect Podcast, where I help you see glimpses of God's glory in the now and the not yet of your unperfect life. So if you're feeling a little less than perfect, you're in the right spot and in good company. Hope and probably a little bit of humor are coming up. So let's dive right back into part two of Busyness, a Barrier to Balance, for the rest of my interview with Sandy. So Sandy, take us on to the next type of poor time manager.
And then the third kind of poor time manager person is a perfectionist. And this is more me. I'm more this person. I'm the one who I have the right amount of things on my plate, but when I get into a project, I want it just so. I spend way too much time getting it just so. I don't know when to walk away from it. It's really, really difficult for me to pull away because I just think if I just had more time, I'd be able to get this a little bit better. No matter what it is, whether it's making dinner or writing a podcast script or cleaning or anything, like I can do it better. My workouts, if I just had more time, I could just work out a little bit longer, a little bit better, like everything feels like that to me. So that's the poor time manager. So again, she doesn't have too much to do. She just isn't managing what she has to do well.
Right.
And then the other kind of busy person is truly the overcommitted busy person. And she does have too much on her plate. So there's a couple of reasons why she might have gotten there. One is that she might be a people pleaser. So a people pleaser will say yes to things that they have no business saying yes to because they're afraid to say no. They don't like what it feels like to disappoint people. They are addicted to approval. The root of that is fear. Some of it is pride, and so she just says yes to too much. The second is the person who feels trapped, like she doesn't have any control over her schedule. This person usually does everything for everyone, and if you took her through each item on her to-do list, she would argue to the death as to why she was the only person who could do it, and she would not she would feel like she truly cannot release one single thing, and that is usually rooted in control. It's also a person who lacks boundaries, doesn't know how to tell people no, but it's not for the same people-pleasing way. It's more of a control, I've got this kind of way. And then there are those of us who have fallen into the comparison trap. And those are the people who look around and they see what everyone else is doing. And so they assume that they're supposed to be doing that too. And you can pick your person that you're comparing yourself to. It might be your sister, your mom, your best friend, your neighbor, your whole social media feed. I mean, it could be a slew, a combination, but you're saying yes to things and you're adding things because you're like, oh, Sandy has a vegetable garden. I need to buy a tomato plant. Sandy doesn't have a vegetable garden, FYI. So that is not true. Or, you might think Sandy has 2 podcasts. I should do 2 podcasts. Like, no, you shouldn't. Not unless God told you to do 2 podcasts. Should you do 2 podcasts? I was very careful before I brought that on, but the person who's trapped by comparison doesn't consider what it might look like for her to try to hold herself to a standard that she projects onto other people. It's just a whole thing. There's several chapters on the comparison trap.
this is listed in one of your steps and strategies, but it kind of goes to that. I think sometimes we compare ourselves with people who are different seasons than us. And you talk
Yes.
about that later in the book. But that was I mean, we had a season of life, a very long season of life, where we were dealing with kids who had been through medical or developmental trauma. And our lives were just not such that I could do what everyone else was doing. I couldn't
Right.
volunteer, but I was trying to, because again, I don't know if it was control or comparison. It was probably a mixture of everything. But
Right.
I mean, it took God a long time. Sometimes I feel bad. I think maybe that's why He left us in that season so long, because it took me that long to
Mm.
realize this is not your season to do that. Like, you need to
Right.
let that go.
Right. That is so true. And really, w- whenever we compare ourselves to other people in any season, like our capacity is not comparable to other people's capacity. Like you and I can have the exact same, we can be in the same season. Our kids could be the same age. We could be doing similar things. We could have a same size house, live in a same city, both be doing the same kind of work, but you might have a slightly greater capacity for activity than me. And
Right.
and so when you are doing your thing and there's all these things on your list and your schedule, you might be completely fine and I might be losing my mind. And
Right.
so you just can't even, like, comparison is never a good idea. There are 0 times in the Bible where we see, um, someone comparing themselves to someone else and it turns out really well. Like, it just
That is
never
a great
happens.
point. Yes.
Yes, 0 times. In fact, I will venture to say that every single time, um, a blatant example of comparison is shared in Scripture, it ends in murder or attempted murder, and you can study that out.
Interesting. Yes,
Very
absolutely.
interesting. Yes. And then the final kind of overcommitted person is the person who just truly does not see the value in a non-busy life, and she wears her busyness like a badge of honor, and
Mm,
she wrongly sees busyness as good and non-busyness as lazy and
mm.
bad. And so she just heaps all this stuff on her schedule because she feels like if she slows down, she'd be disappointing God somehow, or she just wouldn't be okay with herself if she just slowed down, or, people expect this of her. And so she just has to keep going because this is how you, whatever, fill in the blank for something godly and good. That's how you get it, is by just cramming it and going fast. And so yeah, there are a lot of reasons why you might get to have too much on your plate. And so it really does require you to kind of do some digging and soul searching and figure out where you fall there.
Absolutely. And I'll go back several points ago when you were talking about she doesn't know her priorities. Because, and
Yeah.
interestingly, I think I'm every type of busy person that you mentioned, except maybe not the
Interesting. Yeah.
perfectionist. But
Yeah.
again, I've had to learn and work through different seasons, but that doesn't know your priorities. And I'm not going to get into this because I'm going to point people to the episodes where you talk about this on the Balanced Momcast. But you
Mhm.
guys, Sandy there was a major breakthrough in my life when I heard your podcast about your routines, because
Mm.
I, for decades, have been downloading other people's schedules. Like, oh, you want to eliminate, whatever in your life, stress, whatever, download this schedule and do this weekly schedule and whatever. I've killed many trees with all the other people's schedules I've downloaded, and they never
Yeah.
worked. And what I finally realized with yours was the reason it didn't work for me is because that was someone else's plan. And so your
Right.
approach wasn't download this, you know, free schedule. It was look at what God is calling you to do, who you want to
Yeah.
be, and then establish some routines that'll enable you to get there. And again, I won't go into detail on that because you do a fabulous job on that, but that was so powerful to me to just think through I just thought that was brilliant. Like, for the first
Yeah.
time, I
Thank you.
realized I need to make my own schedule based on what God has called me to do and how to think through that.
That's right. Yes. And this, again, it takes some knowing yourself and spending some time with God before you can
Absolutely.
even, yeah, like, how do you even get to, like, when I just throw out there, you should know your priorities. Well, that's a whole load full of like, that
Yes.
how do you even do that? So I in the first part of the book, I actually take us through like what does God say our priorities are?
Mm, right.
And go way back to like what did Jesus say was the most important thing that we do?
Mm,
And so, he said, if I had to like when they tried to corner him and say, "What is the greatest commandment?" He said, "It's to love the Lord your God with all your heart, mind, soul, and strength, and to love your neighbor as yourself." And everything else hangs on this. Like all
right.
the law and prophets hang on these two truths. And so I would say that when you get those two things right, that everything else falls into place. Well, then you have to ask yourself, what does loving God and loving everyone in my life look like right now? What is
Right.
that? What is God asking me to do? How am I supposed to be showing up? If God is God calling me to a time every day to spend time with him and study his word and worship and attend church? Is he calling me to teach something? Is he calling me to serve somewhere? That's going to look different for me than it's going to look
Exactly.
for you. And then
Exactly.
what does my family look like right now? If I'm a mom and I have kids in the home, that's a priority. And I need to make that a priority. And, do I work outside the home? That's a priority. Am I married? Priority.
Right.
And depending on the ages of my kids, priorities for newborns are different than priorities for 22-year-olds who are
Right.
attending graduate school. You know what I mean? It's different.
Yes.
And so it really does require you to step back and go deep and ask God, what are you asking of me right now? And then build your life and, like you said, your routines around those things that are the priorities. And yeah, so it there's a system, there's a process that I take people through, because there is no quick fix. Like I'm not going to tell you, you know what, you really should not
Right.
be doing X, Y, Z, because I don't know what God's telling you to do.
Right.
Yeah,
Right. I love that. I love that.
yeah,
Okay, so if someone wants to break through this barrier to balance, that is this
yeah.
busyness, and they are really resonating with a lot of the things you've said here, what would be a few steps or first few steps? You list a lot of great strategies in the book, but what can you tell us
Yeah.
here would be a first few good steps to take toward freedom in this area?
Well, I'm going to just reiterate what I've already said probably 3 times already, and it really is understanding the root of your busyness.
Mm,
Like, you have got to understand how you got there in the first place, and until you understand the root of why you're busy in the first place, you can't address it. So, the analogy that I like to use is if you came to me and told me that you had a headache, okay, you might need glasses and that's why you have a headache. You might be on your period and that's why you have a headache, or you might have a brain tumor and that's why you have a
right.
headache. How you address each of those things is going to be wildly different. Okay. It's like
Right.
if you get glasses for your brain tumor, that's going to not help. and
Right.
and honestly, I could give you a quick fix and say, here, take this Motrin or this Percocet or whatever, and take your headache away for a period of time. But unless you address why you have the headache in the first place, it's not going to matter. So, how a perfectionist is going to address busyness is way different than, say, the person who wears her busyness like a badge of honor. They're
Sure.
just gonna not address it the same way at all. So yes, I think the very first thing you need to do is do some soul searching, and I kind of take you through that process in the book. Not that I want to just keep pointing people to the book because I want to have the conversation here too, but it really does require you to step back and figure out what the root is. I do have a fun quiz if people want to take the quiz, and it kind of will start them in that direction. At least they can start to kind of be like, oh, that is definitely me, kind of the way you did when you went through the book. I have some little self-assessment, and you can circle where you are, like, oh, that's definitely me, that sounds like me. And then from there you can kind of start going through the process of praying and going on a fast and asking God, writing everything out, seeing, where you are, what you can cancel. And sometimes you just have to just dump the whole thing and start over. I've done that. I'm just like, okay, I'm quitting everything. I don't know. I don't know what my problem is, but I'm going to quit everything. And God, I'm not putting one single thing back on my plate until you tell me to put it back on. So, that's
Yeah.
bankruptcy. That's busyness bankruptcy.
That sounds kind of nice right about now, but
I know. I know. I wouldn't start there. Don't
yes.
declare bankruptcy first. First take the
Yes.
quiz.
And I do recommend the quiz. I'm glad you mentioned that because I did that too. And Sandy sends you some neat information based on what your results were for the quiz. So that's cool.
Yeah.
And we'll put that
Yeah.
in the show notes how they can find you and access that. But yeah, that
Yes.
I had a friend sit down with me at the beginning of the summer. I was stressed. I had just gotten back from a cruise. This was 2 days after I got home from the cruise. Who is stressed
Yeah.
2 days after they get home from a cruise? Well, I did go with my family, but
Yeah.
still. And she was like, "This is ridiculous. You shouldn't be stressed. Tell me what's going on." And I told her all the
Mhm.
things, and
Yeah.
she said very wisely, "What are the things that if you don't accomplish those at the end of this summer, you're going to feel like you failed?" And
Yeah.
I had 3, and she said, "Okay, you got to scrap the rest." Like it was kind
Yeah.
of like that bankruptcy thing, except it was also the
Yes.
priorities thing. It was a lot of those strategies that you're mentioning put together because it
Yeah.
did.
I love
And
it.
it turned out that what I didn't want to let go was just, I didn't want to say no to this person because of how
Yeah.
I wanted them to view me. Like it really, the root, when
Yeah.
I looked at each one, why is this hard to scrap? It was looking at the root of the reason that I didn't want to scrap it. It had nothing to do with my calling to do that very thing. So
Wow. Wow. That's really
yeah,
insightful. I want
yeah.
to hear more about that. I don't know if you, I
Well,
want to delve deeper.
well, it was just, yeah, it was interesting because I was taking your course this summer. And that was very intensive. I was still
Hmm.
kind of writing a Bible study and then I had for the first time all of my kids back home for the summer. Like
Oh,
it
right.
was because my oldest was back home, graduated college, doing an internship,
Yeah.
um, and it was just. But I had been volunteering at a shelter, and I loved the people that I worked with there, and didn't want to let them down. And
Right.
somehow got on the advisory committee that I said I wasn't going to do, but I showed up just let me just see what the first, like, it was just one of those people pleasing. That's really what it was.
Yeah.
Or that sometimes I
Yeah.
get the affirmation of that pat on the back, from,
Sure.
Shelly serves here. Oh, we're so glad you serve, and it's like, oh, that's just
Sure.
making me feel really good about myself. Um,
Right.
and just some of the other things, just even, I don't have to do them all. Like I can, some of the
Right.
things that were on my plate, I could delegate. I mean, there were,
Right.
but it was just and I love that I have a friend. Oh, I have many, but that would
Hmm.
sit down and go, okay, I'm going to talk straight with you. This is
Yes.
what
I
you need to do. And I
appreciate
think
those friends too.
sometimes we can't really see it. And I'll even throw this
Yes.
out. I may just be weird, but bless my husband's heart, he just can't always be the one to point them out to me. It just doesn't
Right.
sit as well
Right.
coming from him. Part of it is because he's so strong in this area. So like it's just a
Yeah.
no nonsense, like, margin, margin, margin. I think his middle
Right.
name is Margin. And mine is not. My middle name, let's go do it. So
Let's go do it.
it's
That's right.
very
Shelly,
hard.
let's go do it.
Let's go do it, Sneed.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
so I think it drives him crazy that someone else will tell me what he was trying to tell me for 10 years. But
Sure.
if you got to have those people that can speak into your life and you not just turn them off for whatever reason.
I agree. I
So
think that is that's a good companion to the first step. Like when you're trying to get to the root of it, sometimes you need to ask the people who love you the most and who know you the best to like ask them, say, this is everything that I've got on my plate. It's too much. I don't know where to cut. Help me.
right.
And sometimes that is such a great, yeah, such a great strategy. If you don't have those safe people in your life, I wouldn't go there first. But if you
Right.
do, absolutely, absolutely. I love it.
Sure. And she was asking questions that, I mean, you could ask yourself, like, why aren't you
Right.
letting this go? What are the, you can question that it asking questions of yourself is a powerful, powerful tool to get down to the whys of things we don't even realize
Right.
why we're doing them.
Absolutely. That's absolutely
Okay. Well,
true. I
you
love it.
have shared so many wonderful nuggets of truth and strategies for us today. And I like to ask my guests one last question as it deals with just this living in the now and the not yet that we as followers of Jesus experience on the daily. So, my question for you
Mhm.
is this, and it doesn't have to pertain to our topic today, but if
Okay.
you could go back and hang out with your younger self, what would you say to her? What is one thing you would say to her?
Okay, well, it would depend on which younger version of myself I'm hanging out with. So, can I talk to
This
3
sounds
different versions of
interesting.
myself?
Absolutely.
Yes. Okay, so I have a teenager still in my home. So my first thought was, "Oh, if I could go back to my teenager self, what would I tell her?" And honestly, this is the one thing I would tell her. I'd be like, "You need to invest in female friendships and stop trying to have a dang boyfriend all the time." Okay, so
Yes.
that would be
Amen.
yeah. So that's just the one. I mean, otherwise I have all the grace for teenage Sandy cuz she didn't know Jesus very well and she just did the dumbest things. So, but whatever. Okay. If I could go back to like my college 20 something self, this is the thing I would tell her. I would tell her that humility and kindness is a much better way to witness to people
Mm.
than to engaging them in a heated theological debate. And I would tell her half of the stuff that you're arguing about, you don't even know what you're talking about, and you won't even believe it anymore when you're 55. Like none of this, like
I
you don't
love
even
it.
believe this point anymore. So stop it. Like you're
Yeah.
scaring people. That's what I would tell her.
We're so
But if I
confident
could
at
go
that age, aren't we?
oh my gosh,
I
it's
have a
so
son
true.
that age now, and he's extremely confident.
I do too.
I
Me
love him,
too.
though.
I have a son and a daughter that age, and it's just I just shake my head and think, "You just don't even know. Just wait."
Just wait. That's right.
I don't ever say just wait, but I think it all the time.
There you
I
go.
do. Yes. And then if I could go back to my younger mama self, okay, so here's what I would say to her. I would say, "You are doing such a great job." And I would give her a big hug and I would tell her to go take a nap. That's what I would do. So I would have so much grace for her and I would just be like, "You are okay. They're okay. Everyone's going to be okay. Stop trying so hard. Go get a pedicure." That's
I
what I would
love
do.
it. I love
Yeah.
it.
So,
I
yeah.
don't know if you're familiar with the author John Acuff. Um,
I am. Oh, I've been following John Acuff since
I love
2008.
I love
Yes.
his stuff, and I just got his
I do
latest
too.
book. All it takes is a
The
goal,
soundtrack.
I
Oh, the
believe.
goal one. Yes, yes, yes.
Yes,
Mhm.
it's very new.
Mhm.
But he mentions that at the beginning, like he was talking about imposter syndrome,
Mm.
which I think we can all relate to at different stages of our life. But he says
Mhm.
to the mom that thinks you're, one of the lies that people tell you is, or that imposter syndrome wants to tell you is you're not good enough. You probably. And he was like, so if you think you're doing a bad job parenting or you feel like an imposter, go hug your
Yeah.
kid, and then
Yeah.
you're one move up on the imposter syndrome. Like
Yes.
you've got one up on him.
Yes.
So like just take that little, you know, take the little
Yep.
bit of encourage yourself with that little nugget. I love that.
Yes. I love it too.
Okay, so we mentioned at the beginning of today's podcast that you actually have two podcasts. One
Mhm.
is the Balanced Momcast. I said that right. Yes.
Yes,
I'm
you
getting
did.
Scoop on Balance is her website. So
That's
I got
right.
that confused earlier. But she also, in case we have some fellow writers or creatives out there listening, she has a podcast and a course, the website, everything called Writing Off Social. Can you give us just a little snapshot of that other part of your life?
Sure. Yes. So writing off social is, well, the goal of writing off social, the mission of writing off social is that we help female Christian writers grow and nurture their audience without social media. And it was born out of last year, I had left social media back in 2021, decided to challenge the moms who follow me to do the same. And in the process of doing that, I realized while liked helping moms get off social media, I loved helping writers get off social
Mm,
media. And so I would be, talking on a podcast like this and after we'd stop recording, I would have podcasters say to me, okay, can you just explain to me how you're doing this without social media? Like, what does that look like? And how did you make the transition off? And what are you doing instead? And then we would go on to have these really amazing conversations. And the more those started happening as I'm trying to promote helping moms get off social media on all these mom podcasts, I thought, wow, this is not, my heart isn't to help the moms as much as it is to help the writers. And
Right.
I love helping moms, and I love helping moms with all of the things we talked about. But with the social media aspect in particular, it led us to writing off social. And so I do that with my friend, Mary Kay Tiller. And she and I have been talking over Voxer for, well, since before either of us left social media. She has been my sounding board through the whole process. And so she was the exact right person to collaborate with on this project. And we just have so much fun. We have the podcast and the course. And we just, this morning, actually, as we're recording this morning, we launched a challenge, which is a variation of the 7-day challenge that I also have done for moms, which I believe you took. So
Yes,
yeah, I
yes,
think you're familiar with that.
so much good information. So, and I would
Yeah.
challenge even, yeah, I would challenge even the non-writers to go over there and do that because there's so
Hmm.
much good information. I know you've adjusted a little
Thanks.
bit for the writers, but
Yes.
very good information.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
I went
Thanks.
to a huge writers conference in May and mentioned the course I was doing with you this summer, and I mean, that is not the advice a lot of writers get. This is a whole nother podcast episode, but people were looking at
Yeah.
me like I'd grown a third head, like
That's right. Like,
you're
what do you
gonna
mean you
try
don't
to
use social
write
media?
and not be on social media. So
Yeah.
very
Yeah.
fascinating. Any writers out there, I definitely encourage you to go over there. And since my listeners won't be finding you on social media, tell us where they can find you.
Yes. Well, everything that I do, my hub is at thescooponbalance.com. And so there you can find my podcast, The Balanced Momcast. There's a link to Writing Off Social on there. I have a blog that I have somewhat abandoned, but we will be reviving it soon, probably on Substack soon, but the link to that will be there. Everything that I do, the podcast, The Balanced Momcast, all of that, it all, you can find it at thescooponbalance.com. So yeah, best place to find me.
Okay, wonderful. And like I said earlier, I will be putting links to the things we've talked about, to the books, to your website, to the busyness quiz. There'll be all kinds of yummy goodness in the show notes. So y'all make
Yay.
sure and go there. So Sandy, always a blessing to spend time with you, my friend.
Mm.
Glad that we're real friends now and not just that you're my secret friend who's in my ear every day on your podcast.
Which is creepy. Yeah, we need not to not go any further with that
No,
kind of
we
friendship.
won't.
No,
If you're
we
just
just need
tuning
to
in,
have this one.
I wasn't stalking her. You need to go back and listen to the beginning.
That's right.
Thank you again for joining us at the Unperfect podcast today.
Oh, thanks so much for having me, Shelley. It was great.
I hope you've gained insights into diagnosing your own busyness causes and some strategies for prioritizing what matters most. Explore more on this topic in Sandy's Bible study, Finding Your Balance, and take her free quiz, What's Your Busyness Personality?, where you'll receive more free biblical practical insights in your inbox. Both are linked in the show notes. And finally, grab your free copy of The Unperfect Promises of God, 5 scriptures and prayers to strengthen your faith in the now and the not yet. That link's also in the show notes. You can visit my website for related blog posts, www.shelleysneed.com, and that's Sneed, S-N-E-A-D. But more importantly, immerse yourself in God's Word for the greatest story ever written, one that God is still writing in your life at this very moment. May you find wonder in a perfect God amid your unperfect life. See you next time.